Hello, everyone. Tonight we begin in a world flooded with sunlight, olive oil, and the terracotta of ancient Greece, a place where philosophers stroll at leisure while ordinary people struggle to survive. Here were born democracy, philosophy, myth, and statues that do not believe in clothing. Yet behind the golden glow of the Acropolis, behind the learned sigh of Socrates, lies a way of life that, if you stepped into it for even one day, might wear you out before breakfast. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment to tell me where you are watching from, and at what time. I always find it delightful to know you come from every time zone in the world. Now, switch off the lights, perhaps turn on a fan for a soft hum, and let us step together into tonight's journey. You wake, not to an alarm clock or a phone, but because the sun is turning your house into a roasting oven. The air is thick, like olive oil forgotten on the stove, and pity yourself if you are still lying on a straw mat, drenched in sweat as if you had just run a marathon in a chitin. Your home, calling it a house sounds grand, is really a box of sun-dried bricks with a flat roof, thick walls, narrow rooms, and a layout that seems to have been designed by someone who truly hated windows. The tiny openings have no glass, only a few rickety wooden slats, just wide enough for a cat to squeeze through and, if the wind is generous that day, for a little breeze to slip inside. And you are not alone. You live with your parents, your siblings, your children, and very likely a goat. The only creature that never minds a lack of private space. You roll off the bed, or rather off that straw mat as thin as a New Year's promise, and immediately the floor beneath your feet feels as hot as a griddle. The walls may be thick, but they do not insulate. In summer they absorb heat like a sponge and exhale it evenly through the night. In winter they do the reverse, drinking in every trace of warmth and returning to you the cold of an icebox. Your chitin, a long stretch of cloth wrapped and pinned, clings to your skin. You have not yet stepped out of the room, and already it feels like entering a public steam bath. Except no one has mopped the floor, and there is no lemongrass oil drifting in the air. You rise and tread softly like a cat among the bodies sleeping here and there, hoping you will not step on anyone and that no one will step on you. You go into the small yard, if your home is lucky enough to have one, and draw a deep breath. The scent of the new day fills the air. Baked earth, wood smoke from a neighbor's hearth, and the not yet washed smell of your own sweat. From far away comes the gentle clatter of a city waking, the rattle of wooden wheels, the call of a delivery man, a rooster crowing at the wrong hour, and, naturally, a philosopher beginning a dawn debate about the nature of justice. You ladle up a scoop of water, liquid as precious as gold, unless you live near a public fountain, and splash it on your face, hoping for cool refreshment. No, it is more like being splashed by a puddle in the streets of Athens. You rub a little olive oil under your skin, not to moisturize, but to gather the dust, and then you prepare to scrape it off with a strigil. It is a curved strip of metal like a soup ladle, gentle in motion but not in feeling, rather like giving yourself a massage with a bronze spoon and hoping your skin doesn't come off with the dirt. While you stand there, the sounds around you swell. Voices, a donkey snort, and someone scolding a child for stepping on a neighbor's figs. You remember that today is market day. You will have to go out, to walk along cracked roads strewn with sharp stones and animal droppings. And you still have no sandals. If you're lucky, you'll find a pair of leather sandals as thin as walking in them feels almost like going barefoot. If not, good luck to your feet on the jagged, moon-like streets of Athens. You turn back inside. The children begin to stir, and from the kitchen corner, your mother calls, "There's bread left from last night. Eat quickly before the mice come." You look at the barley loaf, dry and broken like tiny blocks of cement, and you know this is the most sumptuous breakfast you will have today. You have not eaten, you have not changed, you have done nothing at all, and already you are tired. Sweat trickles in a thin stream down the nape of your neck, and you quietly wish you could crawl back to the straw mat with no pillow, just to dodge the merciless heat of the morning.
But no, the day has only just begun. You have never cherished a modern spring mattress and a soft pillow more than you do now, because last night you experienced what the Greeks called a bed, and what you would call silent torture. A thin straw mat laid directly on brick or stone, cold or hot depending on the season, with nothing to support your back but the fragile hope that a few stalks survived last winter. Sleep on your side? The floor refuses. Sleep on your back? Your spine has just learned the ancient definition of a dull ache. There is no pillow, only a rolled cloak to rest your head on or your own arm. And if you wake with one side of your face numb, congratulations. That means you are still alive. You shared the sleeping space with at least 4 others. Your mother snores. Your younger sibling talks in sleep. And the goat, yes, the goat, seems bloated and produces sounds that would make even the god Pan blush. That bedroom is in truth the only room in the house where everyone eats, sleeps, argues, and sometimes together makes oil lamps from sheep fat. Privacy exists only in legend. You might think, well then, it is like camping. But here there are no sleeping bags, no tents, no flashlights, only mosquitoes that never sleep, neighbors shouting about a missing chicken, and the awkwardness of waking at night to relieve yourself, picking your way through darkness, trying not to step on anyone, and remembering where the water jar is. You try to sleep again, but the heat is too much. Summer in Athens spares no one. Even night does not bring coolness, only a different kind of suffocation. Slow, persistent, like a damp chitin sticking to your skin. You roll to one side and are kicked awake by your sibling, who is dreaming of battling Spartans. Finally, you sit up. It is still dark, but the early sounds begin to murmur. A neighbor calling her chicken, far off, the scrape of someone cleaning a stall. You stand. Your back gives a small threatening crack. You stretch your legs and wander out to the little yard where you see your father sitting and sighing. It is not philosophy. His back hurts worse than yours. You take up the heavy clay water jar because there is no alternative. Every household keeps a big jar in the corner of the yard. If you live near a public fountain, you are fortunate. If not, you walk to the village well. And no one will help you. Carrying water is each person's task, unless you have slaves, and as you know, you do not belong to that class. You move through the pale morning, chitin hastily wrapped. Your shoulders ache beneath the jar's weight. Your hands are dusty. Quietly you hope not to meet the black dog that haunts the corner and despises everyone carrying jars. The roadway is rough with stones, muddy in places, slick elsewhere with olive oil spilled yesterday. You go barefoot. Sandals are a luxury, and you have not managed to buy new ones since rats gnawed your last pair's straps. At the fountain, about 6 others are already drawing water. No one talks. There are only small nods. The last in line slips and breaks a jar.
Everyone lowers their eyes as if they saw nothing. Each broken jar here is a heart falling from its ribs. Fired clay is not cheap, and starting over is a small nightmare. You dip and fill, turn, and feel the cool rim touch your neck. A moment's relief before you remember you still must cook, clean, and prepare for a morning in an ancient city you were never quite ready to inhabit. When you return, the house is lively. Your mother is soaking hard bread in watered wine. Your younger sibling is arguing over who spilled the olives. Your father tries to remember which market day it is. You set the jar down in its corner, exhale, sweat already trickling from your brow into your tunic. And still, the day has not yet begun. Historians still argue whether domestic life in ancient Greece was intimate kinship or a chain of emotional confinement within four walls. For you, the truth is growing clear. You do not merely share space, you share every breath, every itch, every sigh. You glance at the yard where sunlight threads in like a reminder. Be ready. Your back aches, you are tired, and you have not brushed your teeth. There is no toothbrush. Athens will keep turning as always, and you must keep pace. You still do not have sandals, and breakfast is still yesterday's bread. You have just eaten breakfast, if one can call it that. A block of barley bread dry as building sand. Its taste is the taste of nothing, and its texture could replace paving stones. You chew slowly, dip it in watered wine to soften it, and receive only damp disappointment and a few gritty shards caught between your teeth. Expect nothing more. Here, breakfast is not for pleasure. It is a duty, a tentative start to a day of labor, brutal sunshine, and philosophy that arrives uninvited. No coffee, no eggs, no cereal, none of the things you once tied to the phrase, a decent morning. Only bread, perhaps with olives salty as the sea. If you are lucky, a little goat cheese. Today is not lucky. You are not sitting at a table. You sit on the floor, on a collapsing stool, or even on a stone. Your family forms a ring, each eating in silence or speaking softly about the person in the street who was stung in the face by a bee while wiping the statue of Hera. The women of the house, your mother, your sister, perhaps you, if you were born into that role, do not eat at the same time as the men. They eat after, often what remains, and if what remains is a lump harder than the city wall, they simply smile and chew as if this is the joy a morning should bring. Historians still debate whether this division at meals was a formal ritual or a clear sign of discrimination. Either way, the women in your house are not there to argue. They are busy scouring a pot with sand and getting the rubbish ready to place outside the door, along with the latest gossip. You finish, still hungry, but you know eating more would take someone else's share, so you stand and quietly brush your hands on your dress or cloak. Fullness does not exist here, only not being so hungry that you faint.
You step out into the streets of Athens, already stirring. Vendor calls drift like waves. Fresh fish, eyes still clear. A grandmother scolds her son for watering the honey. A knot of men in front of the temple of Apollo argue about the nature of virtue, their hems let down past the knee because of the heat. You thread your way between hawkers, home-brewed wine, wreaths of daisies, clay dyed for rouge, amulets to ward off colds. Everyone shouts over everyone else, each certain his goods matter most. You know the only things you need are a lungful of clean air and a pocket of shade, but Athens keeps shade like a secret. White roofs, stone walls, narrow lanes, and a sun that glares without pity. You begin to feel like a slice of bread left to dry on a rooftop. Sweat runs in fine threads down your back, and your eyes sting. You wish someone had invented dark glasses. All you have is a rough piece of cloth to veil your face, which makes you sweat more. You glance around, trying to locate the public bath where, toward evening, you might pour water over yourself. It is still too early, and there is work to do. You think of the Western Well, where people gather to gossip and sometimes to flirt. You are not in the mood. You only want to sluice water over your face and sit for a few minutes without being reminded to haul jars home. You settle on the steps near the Temple of Mycenae and watch the city stream past. Farmers shouldering straw. A weathered soldier, perhaps just back from a skirmish, tugging at his beard and muttering about lost glory. A child arguing with a rooster. You realize that no one here is idle. There is no leisurely Saturday in this place. You search for a reason to delay your chores. Perhaps you could pretend to buy flax, or stop by your friend's stall for a sip of herbal wine, but you know there is no excuse. If you do not finish, no one will. If no one does, everything falls apart. There is no social care. Only rope, barley, sweat, and the belief that the gods are watching. You rise. The sun grows harsher. Your eyes narrow. A gentle thought slips in. That dull breakfast may have been the easiest part of the day. You smile, a small and brittle smile, and walk on. You do not go far before you remember it is market day. Not a lantern-lit night bazaar with music and buttered flatbreads, but the Athenian kind, where shouting outnumbers speech and the smell of sweat competes with the stale reek of fish. You turn into the Agora, the city's central square, the heart that pumps every rumor, bargain, and now and then metaphysics between two rows of raisins. On a frayed rug, an old man has arranged small daggers, a necklace of mouse bones strung as a talisman, and a cracked jar being sold as something once used in the household offerings of the House of Perry. Across the way, an old woman sits beside a basket of stained cloth with a sleeping cat and a few wilting herbs. You do not ask the price, nor why her cat is dozing in the vegetables. Such things are ordinary here. You slip past a circle gathered at the public fountain. A youth stands in the middle, bareheaded in a saffron cloak, the badge of one who has read too much Plato. He cries, "Then what is the essence of justice, if not the soul's reflection in moral acts?" You try to skirt him, but he sees you. His eyes flashed like a cat's at the sight of a mouse. "Do you believe in absolute truth?" You shake your head, lift a hand to say you are busy, and lengthen your stride. Too late. A little swarm of philosophy students begins to follow like bees to honey. You duck into a pottery shop to escape a tactical lecture. The owner looks at you, then at a cracked pot, then at the sky, as though composing a sad poem. "Looking for something?" he asks. "A place to breathe," you say. "I only have chipped jars," he answers, "but I sympathize." Historians will always debate whether the Agora was the summit of democratic freedom or simply a widened playground for the ruling class. To you, it is a boiling stew. News, dried fish, irritated philosophy, and the dust of the city. As you prepare to move on, a trumpet sounds in the distance. Not festival music, but the military call. A file of soldiers in simple armor, bronze helmets shining, marches through the square. Some of them may be your neighbors. Yesterday they sold grain. Today they carry spears.
You watch them and remember that in Athens, soldiering is not a profession. It is duty, honor, and something you cannot avoid if you are a free man. You shiver, not because you fear war, though you should, but because of the trumpet sounds again, you or someone you love will have to go. No one checks whether you have trained, whether you wheeze, whether your heart once misfired. If your legs can stand and you can swing a spear without stabbing yourself, excellent. Into the line. You try to quiet the horn in your head and return to your task. Fetch water. At last you reach the public fountain. The line is very long, each person carrying at least one jar. You have nothing but 2 hands. So you wait, standing under the bright sun while sweat seeps through cloth and slides down your spine. A woman in front of you turns and murmurs, "It's stifling today." You nod as if you were inside the belly of a sacred bull. She laughs. At least ancient Greece has a sense of humor. When your turn comes, you bend and dip the ladle, trying not to spill, because each drop is a small victory. The water is cool and clear, but as you lift it to your mouth, you remember that no one boils water here. There's no filtering, no purifying. You drink, you pray, and you wipe your lips as if a small god has just granted you a gift. You start the long walk home, sun hard, stomach still thin with hunger, head softly buzzing with street philosophy. When you set the jar down in the yard, you freeze. Your younger sibling stands in the middle of the courtyard holding a dead snake. The child squeals, "Look, I made the god-ass Pios proud, didn't I?" You sigh. That was Hera's sacred serpent. We are about to be cursed. You step inside thinking that at least there will be lunch. But midday in old Athens is not what you hope. Please do not ask about salad. Do not hope for omelets or butter on bread. Lunch is bread, again, perhaps some onion, a few olives, and if fortune smiles, a shaving of dried fish thin as an IOU. You eat in silence, part fatigue and part etiquette, because anyone who speaks while biting raw onion loses elegance points. Your eyes drift past the tiny window where sunlight lays a bar across the packed earth floor. A fly circles. You follow it as if it were the only news bulletin of the day. You are still hungry, but taking more would steal from someone else. You stand, dust your hands on tunic or wrap, and accept that not starving will have to do. You have not finished the last hard mouthful when a voice calls from the yard. A man in a gray cloak, a wax tablet and stylus in his hand, shouts your name. Not a survey, levy, or at least a civil muster to help build the new wall. No one may refuse. No one says, "I have a meditation appointment," and is excused. You step out with heavy belly and numb legs, as if entering a day-long humming call with stones and the possibility of danger. Today's work is hauling limestone from a nearby quarry to a building yard inside the walls. The blocks are larger than your hope for a day off. They give you a pair of worn sandals, a rope, and an iron bar for prying. No gloves, no free water, no planned breaks. You and 3 others lash a stone to a plank and drag it, half sliding, half stumbling, breathing like fish pulled uphill. With each step your sandals squeal on the ground as if begging for rescue. The heat does not shine. It drops over you like a heavy blanket. Sweat runs from places you did not think had glands. You begin to wonder whether the underworld feels like this, and whether you are on a free trial. A workman beside you mutters, still pulling, "Every day I pray that Zeus sends rain, but he must be courting someone new." You smile without words. During a brief rest, you sit under a tree, if that brittle scrap can be called a shade, sip from your jar, and watch an ant carry a crumb. At least it pays no tax. Back to work. A knot of children races past yelling, "Make way, the magistrate's cart!" Everyone steps aside. A wooden carriage rattles by, dust billowing. On it sits a plump man wearing a laurel wreath, peering down as if the world were a meat pie and he had not yet chosen the best slice. He glances at you and says nothing. He doesn't need to. In his eyes, you are nothing more than the rope you
Are pulling. You remember that historians still debate whether Greek society was truly democratic as the inscriptions say. For you, democracy today means being allowed to haul stone without being beaten. The afternoon drifts by as slowly as cold honey. At moments, you think time itself has stopped, but no, it is only being drawn out, like every hope inside you. At last, the sun tilts, and an overseer calls, "Stop!" The words sound like a school bell of release. You drop the rope, let the iron pry bar fall, and try to rise like a warrior skewered by 3 spears who still wants to make it home in time for supper. On the way back, you pass a small shrine where a woman is lighting incense. You catch the whisper, "Athena, grant me the wisdom to know which man to marry." It is such a specific prayer. You step by quietly and think that if you had the chance, you would ask a god for help too, but you do not know which god is in charge of easing back pain. At home, you find your younger siblings struggling to light the oil lamp. "The wick is damp," they complain. You lend a hand, and the two of you sit there, the wavering flame painting the clay wall. Your shadows dance as if they are trying to tell a story no one bothers to translate. Supper is bread again, but this time there is a bean stew, a small pot burbling on the hearth, giving off a scent both comforting and haunting. You ladle it into a clay bowl, blow gently, and sip. The warmth you feel is not just heat. After a day of dragging stone, being chased by philosophy, and drinking unboiled water, a hot bowl of beans is like a tiny poem written in beans. You lean back on the packed earth bed, stare at the cracked ceiling, and wonder what tomorrow will be. Then you remember tomorrow is public bath day. You groan softly and drift off. Not because you are ready, but because your body shuts down like an overworked machine. You wake before the sun, not out of any industry, but because the roosters have no sense of time, and your back aches as if you slept on a pile of paving stones. There is no alarm clock, only the world of ancient Greece booting up, the crackle of kindling, someone scolding a goat for eating a basket, and your endless sigh when you realize it is bath day. Bathing sounds restful, doesn't it? You imagine a cool pool, a few floating sprigs of herb, someone rubbing your back with rosemary. But no, the reality is a public spout, a cold bronze basin, and a long line of bare bodies arguing about debts while they scrub with pumice. You carry a little flask of olive oil, the one luxury of the day, and your old strigil, the curved bronze blade for scraping after oiling. There is no soap, no creamy white foam, no one humming gently in a tiled corner. Instead, there is a damp stone room where the fall of water is threaded with the voices of old men telling war stories as if they were the heroes of every battle. A man about your age, fuzzed with new beard and cave-deep in voice, laughs, "Last time I used linseed oil instead of olive oil, and I smelled like grilled dead fish." You nod, sympathetic, and slip off your chiton, feeling there is nothing more naked than standing in a crowd with a scraper in your hand, trying to balance between embarrassment and slipping.
You oil yourself. Your skin instantly becomes the crisp version of a Greek salad. Then you scrape from neck downward, from back around to chest. It is cool and stinging and strange all at once. When you finish, you rinse in cold water so shocking it makes you bleat like a poked goat. Historians still argue whether oiling and scraping is a sign of advanced hygiene or just a way to hide the lack of hot water and any notion of germs. You do not need a debate. You only know you are clean, or clean enough for the 5th century before the Common Era. You leave the baths trembling in the morning breeze, but your head feels lighter. And that is when you remember there is a meeting of the ecclesia, the citizens' assembly. Not everyone is welcome, but you are a male citizen born in Athens and over 18, so you have no reason to dodge it, apart from very much wanting to. You go to the Pnyx Hill, where thousands gather. There is no microphone, only a stone platform, and the speaker must bawl as if calling a stray flock. Anyone may speak, so long as they are loud enough, patient enough, and unafraid of whistles. The first man rises to talk about taxes. The second speaks of war. The third, you recognize him as the curly-bearded philosopher you fled yesterday, begins again. Justice. You groan inside. You do not speak, you are not that reckless yet, but you raise your hand to vote, a shard of pottery carrying the name of a candidate you chose at random. Someone beside you whispers, "That's the one who once proposed a breathing tax." You keep silent. Too late. You head home, passing a knot of pupils reciting Homer. An 8-year-old bellows, "Sing, O swift-footed Achilles," then stops to ask, "Does Uncle Achilles know how to make souvlaki?" The teacher shakes his head. "Ask Apollo." Back home, you are sent to fetch honey. The shop sits at the end of a narrow lane where dogs, children, and philosophers compete for space. The honey rests in clay jars beside a sign, "Sweet as Aphrodite's kiss." Apply externally or internally. "How much?" you ask. "A drachma and a half, but flatter me in verse and I'll cut the price." You try. Your eyes are like clean well water in dusty agora. He laughs. For daring to compare me to a drain, you pay full. You take the honey and privately vow never to write poetry again. On your way back, a child asks his father, "If I don't want to be a citizen, what can I be? A slave or a philosopher? Neither pays a wage." You chuckle, not loud, just enough to remember that in Athens's dusty madness there are still small, simple moments, like a spoon of honey on a windy day. You return home with the precious liquid gold, your legs just recovering from the unintended pilgrimage through crowded streets, but rest is a luxury. Your mother, whose eyes catch any plot to shirk work, gives you the next task. Go to the fields.
Fields are not for admiring sunsets. They are for work. Your family has a small plot on the edge of Athens, too little to call a farm, enough to make you sweat and lose sleep over weeds. You roll up your sleeves, slip on sandals that have seen better days, and with your younger brother carry the tools, a hoe, a basket, and a fragile hope for shade. The sky is not generous. The sun pours down as if Helios just got a battery upgrade and decided to double the power. Your task is to pull weeds, mound soil at the roots of the olive trees, and check the rabbit snare. Your brother's duty is supervision, which means sitting in the shade, eating grapes, and occasionally shouting,
You missed a spot. You bend. Heat rises from the ground like a curse. The soil is dry, cracked, and clings to every blade of grass as though each were treasure. You tug. A small lizard skitters over your foot, as if to say, "Well done, volunteer slave." You recall how historians still argue whether Greek peasants were truly free, as the old texts praise, or simply ruled by land instead of men. With clay-streaked hands and a sore back, you lean toward the second. After an hour, you rest. You bite leftover morning bread and dip it in the new honey. Sticky sweet, simple, it lets a little peace settle in you. You check the snare again. No rabbit, only a stray cat asleep on the net, half dreaming like a monarch. You do not dare to shoo it. Cats may not rank highly in Greek culture, but you are tired, and cats have claws. Toward evening, you and your brother haul water to the trees. No hoses, no sprayers, only clay jars heavy as guilt. Each step toward the well is a wish that gravity might be gentler. You meet the old neighbor tending lettuce. "Who will win?" he asks. "Athens or Sparta?" Half joking, you answer, "The sky. When they finish fighting, the sun will still shine." He laughs, a deep cough of a laugh, warm all the same. On the way back, you hear a far-off flute. A group of youths are practicing for a coming festival. The rhythm wobbles, yet it is enough to make you pause and listen, not because the music is too fine, but because music here is rare, like a dream slipping into dusty daylight. You sit at the verge and watch sunset dye the city walls red. You wonder whether one day someone will tell your story, the one who pulled weeds, watered trees, almost caught a rabbit, and survived another day without losing a sense of humor. Your brother calls, "Let's go, Mother says ghosts come out after dark." You sigh, hoist the empty basket, and walk home with the last light, carrying a little weariness, a little honey, and a little poem of the everyday. You arrive just as the hearth begins to glow. In the kitchen corner, your mother stirs a pot that smells like food, or a charm. "What's for dinner?" you ask. "Barley porridge, salted and seasoned with a pinch of Lady Luck." You do not ask more. Last week, Lady Luck turned out to be minced dried fish. Supper in your house unfolds like a philosophy seminar if philosophers were hungry, irritable, and armed with wooden spoons. There is no table. You sit cross-legged on the floor around a common bowl. Each person scoops a portion and eats in quiet, sometimes with one hand because the other hand is swatting flies. No TV, no podcast, only chewing and synchronized sighs. You think, "This porridge isn't bad." Then your teeth find a pebble and you change your mind. Your younger sibling shares a market tale about an old man who swore he met Dionysus as a goat. You smile, thinking either he truly met the god or his wine needs inspection. After supper comes ancient entertainment. Not games or streaming, but weaving, knitting, and a contest to tell the strangest story without earning father's scold. Grandmother begins with a cousin who kept a three-legged chicken for luck. Father merely nods. Better than the uncle who raised scorpions to harvest venom for secret ink. Night falls. There is no electricity. The house is lit by an oil lamp, a small bowl with a rag wick that crackles like it's whispering old things. Yellow light dances on the earthen walls, and you feel as if you live inside a page not yet written. The bed is still a thin mat on the floor, pressed against siblings, and sometimes the nameless cat, the true owner here. No pillow, only a folded sleeve. No blanket, only a frayed cloak. No privacy, unless you count the corner your brother refuses to sleep in.
Because of scratching sounds. You close your eyes, but sleep does not come easily. Your mind keeps circling what you heard today, about the council, about the fields, about the woman punished for forgetting to make an offering, about the talk that Sparta may attack. Part of you wonders if you are living or merely enduring. The rest answers, "Hush now, sleep." From the street come hurried footsteps, perhaps a watchman, perhaps someone running because they stole a loaf of bread. You will not know. You do not want to know. You hope tomorrow the sun will be kinder, the goat will not escape, and you can ask your mother to change the porridge to anything else. Historians still argue whether the lives of ordinary Greeks were so repetitive they became dull. But as you lie here counting the even breaths of your family, hearing the wind hiss through the crack of the door, and feeling life continue, unmagnificent but true, you think perhaps it is dull, and perhaps that is peace. Another night in Athens. You have not died of heat, not been exiled for a misplaced remark, not been pressed into service because a leader changed his mind. It means you have lived through one more day, dusty, porridge-filled, and with a lively chance of being struck by lightning if you forgot to honor Zeus. A small victory, but yours. You sigh softly and sleep. Classical Greece drifts by as you dream, and you are running from a talking goat that ushers you into a ring of philosophers, quarreling about mushrooms. You wake to roosters, 3 of them, crowing out of step as if competing to sound more despairing. Dawn has barely arrived, yet light tiptoes past the wooden shutter onto your face, reminding you there is no sleeping in. You sit up, your knees click, your back aches as though you had slept upon a mosaic of stones. Last night you dreamed you drank cold pomegranate juice in the shade, almost a miracle. In that dream, SC asked how you know cold is real if you have never known heat. You answered, "Sir, let us save that for morning." And morning indeed has come. You step into the yard. The early air is sharp, but will not last. The heat will rise quickly, as usual. You wash your face with well water so cold it startles you awake. In the wooden dipper, you glimpse a reflection. Sticky eyes, tangled hair, a mosquito welt the size of a coin. A perfect portrait of survival in Athens. Your father calls from inside. Go trade wine. Today your errand is new, to your distant uncle in the next village, to swap olive oil for an amphora of wine, a perfectly lawful exchange, with no invoices, no tax stamps, only a word and the work of your feet. You tie on a cloth cap, hoist the clay jar, and set out. The road out of Athens is dust and stones, with a few goats whose freedom seems larger than yours. An old woman limps by, scolding a boy for kicking a sacred fig. No one should anger a holy tree. Historians still debate whether Greeks truly believed gods dwelt in trees, or whether the stories simply kept children from ruining gardens. Either way, you pass with care. A little farther on, people have gathered to hear a street philosopher. An old man in a cloak, holding a wooden tablet, asks, "If a donkey cannot choose between 2 identical bundles of hay, will it starve? And what about us?" You slip away. Your choice is clearer. Bring wine or face your mother's disappointment. You reach your uncle's cottage at the end of a muddy lane richly perfumed with goats. He welcomes you with a grin and a joke that good olive oil makes the wine sit happily in the belly. You sit together, take a testing sip, and in 3 minutes the talk turns to Sparta. You learn that any Greek conversation can reach Sparta within the time it takes to pour a second cup. You decline that second cup. You know being late with the wine is the shortest road to your mother's sigh. You leave with the amphora, heavy and fragile as a young heart, and turn homeward. On the way, you meet a small troop rehearsing for the harvest. Women with garlands, children shaking rattles, a man in a goat mask dancing. You pause a moment and watch them sing an old hymn, in tones perhaps only Dionysus loves. Still, it is real. Laughter, color, the smell of baking from far off, an Athens without war or philosophy, only people living together. You reach home before noon. Your father tastes the wine, nods, and lifts his cup. A wordless praise. You sit, back damp with sweat, heart a little warm. You went.
You returned, you traded for wine, and kept the jar intact in ancient Athens. That is a victory. Midday in ancient Athens is like a trial the gods set for mortal flesh. The sun pours straight down with no mercy at all. You sit indoors, pressed into the thin ribbon of shade the clay wall throws, sweat sliding from the nape of your neck as if your body were simmering in an earthen pot. There is no cooling, no sunscreen, only a small hand fan woven from an olive sprig, and a patience you are not sure you still possess. Your mother says that at this hour, no one goes outside. You die of heat, not of swords, a proverb that feels like a national motto. You try to nap to the drowsy hum of flies, but a midday nap in Athens is an art you have not learned. Neighbors argue about a loan, dogs bark at dust, and someone on the next street practices the reed flute like a punishment levied on the whole neighborhood after heartbreak. You recite the gods for calm, Hades, Athena, Apollo, yet when you reach Hermes, your mind runs off to the salted fish you have not finished. You sigh. The siesta fails. By mid-afternoon, when the heat loosens its grip, you and your brother go to the well. The walk is short, yet it feels like a desert crossing. You balance the clay jar on your shoulder, what modern folk might call functional fitness. Here it is simply called, if you drop it, expect scolding. The well is the village's meeting place. One rinses greens, another scrubs clothes, children splash each other, and old men argue about who once felled the biggest boar. You overhear a curious tale. Someone saw a priestess of Demeter weeping in the trees, saying the land would be barren this year because the rites lacked white goose. Historians still dispute whether animal sacrifice affects harvests or only preserves custom and social order. You cannot prove anything, but if drought comes, you will grumble about that missing goose. On the way back, you pass men drilling in the yard behind a small shrine. Bare chests, simple loincloths, wooden spears in hand, reserve soldiers as every free citizen must be. You ask one, is war coming? He shrugs. No, but Sparta never sleeps. You walk on with a small heaviness. You have never wielded a sword, your hands know jars better than shields, but in Athens that does not matter. If the city is attacked, everyone goes. Poets, carpenters, and the maker of porridge. At dusk, you climb to the roof, the single place that welcomes wind. From above, Athens spreads like a terracotta maze. Tile roofs, thin threads of kitchen smoke, children weaving through lanes. Far off, the Parthenon catches the red light like a lamp keeping watch. You think Pericles must be dining in a house without flies, and you smile to yourself. Even he cannot flee heat and dust. He only has an extra pair of hands to fan him. You linger while the smell of cooking, the clink of goat bells, and the returning song of girls become a small, tired symphony of Athens. You go down when night has settled. Your father sips watered wine, your mother mends a tunic, your little brother sleeps with his cheek against the basin. No one says much. There is no need. The day has passed, you are whole, and no summons has come. Night drapes lightly, like the cloak of Nyx. You slip onto your strip of matting, hug your knees, and close your eyes, hoping there will be no mosquitoes and that by morning the flutist will change his tune.
It is not yet truly light, but footsteps already ring from the alley's mouth. You wake to a start. Before you can tell dream from day, your mother whistles softly. Up, child, today it is our turn in the market. You groan inwardly. Market day means dust, sweat, and voices raised over the price of greens. You pull a thin cloak over your shoulders, tie your belt, and follow her out. Basket in hand, cloth cap on. The chill air cannot hold down the dust that rises under the first feet of the crowd. The agora, the city's heart, is not only for vegetables. It is exchange, news, philosophy, proclamations, and sometimes fights over eggplants. A man shouts that if anyone lets a goat eat his tubers again, he will sue to the last obol. You and your mother find a bare patch, spread a cloth, and set out small jars of olive oil, a little sea salt, and a dozen figs. She calls in a perfectly measured voice, "Early pressed oil, smooth as Aphrodite's hair." People glance, sniff, and haggle. You keep quiet, learning to tell true buyers from those who only look. Your mother winks. The real customer
will ask about the quality of the oil, not how pretty the jar is. An old man with a silver beard and a cane comes close. "I still remember swapping a wineskin for 2 jars of oil here last year. The oil was fine, but my cat didn't like it. Strange, isn't it?" Your mother says evenly, "Perhaps your cat is the reincarnation of a very picky god." You look around. On the other side, a man sells dried fish. Next to him, a pottery stall shows owls and lions. There is even a street artist drawing portraits in charcoal on cloth. A mother is teaching her daughter to refit a kitten so it won't slip. You turn away, trying not to blush. In the middle, a crowd gathers around a young orator. He stands on a wooden crate, hands slicing the air. "What is freedom, if only some may speak?" The crowd murmurs. You think he is good, though you suspect if anyone questions him back, he'll have nothing concrete to say. Historians still debate whether the agora was truly a forum for all views or only for those with the right voice, the right roots, and the right gender. You help your mother pack early as the heat thickens. You've done fairly well, some drachmae and 2 empty jars. On the way home, you stop at a tiny stall to buy baked barley cakes. Old grain, hard as stones, yet with figs they taste unexpectedly good. An old man watches you chew and says, "That is the taste of Athens. Tough, but it keeps you full." Before you are home, you meet a group of youths heading for Piraeus, the main harbor. They hoist cargo aboard and haul on ropes, singing as they work. You catch a line. "Send the olives out. Bring the wine back. If there is no money, at least there is sun and salt." You think you should copy it down. It explains about 70% of the Athenian economy. That evening, after a simple supper of bread, oil, and a little salted fish, you sit on the threshold listening to your father recall his market days. Once you traded 2 chickens for a knife that turned out to be for left-handers. Afterward, he learned to write with his left hand. "See?" he says. You laugh, unsure if it is wisdom or an elegant excuse. Before sleeping, you reflect that in a few hours at the agora, you saw a whole city in miniature. Quarrels, deals, promises, sweat, and your mother's deftness you cannot help admiring. No one teaches you macroeconomics here, yet one morning in the agora shows that everything in Athens is exchange. Goods, words, and even belief. You curl up on your mat, your hands still smelling of oil and the market's dust. You never thought selling figs could make you this tired, but you smile. You have survived a day in the agora and in the city of the gods. That is enough to call a small victory. Next morning, you do not go to market, fetch water, or wake to the creak of oars or goats calling one another. Today, you follow your father to the city council place called the Phoenix, which sounds solemn like a parliament, but is really hundreds of men pouring onto a hillside to argue. You are not old enough to speak, of course, but you can sit at the edge to listen and watch. If you never learn debate, you'll spend your life being persuaded. your father says, a line slightly ironic because he once let a wine cellar convince him that old vinegar is mature flavor. The Phoenix is a broad ground with rough steps looking down on Athens as if the whole city were a gallery for the quarrel below. Those who take part are male citizens over 18, born to 2 Athenian parents. People like you, women, slaves, and medics, stand outside. Historians still argue whether this was the first real democracy or only a private club for men in good sandals who can recite Homer. A man rises in the circle, tall, balding, and a white kitten. "Shall we tax raisins more?" There are groans, laughter, curses. Another man shouts, "I object because then my wife will feed me hard cakes all season." The crowd roars. You're surprised this is how Athens decides policy, with laughter and bread. Then a younger man speaks about building new walls to protect the port of Piraeus. Someone shouts, "With what money?" He points behind him, "Cut the theater budget." Laughter peals again, but your father murmurs, "He's not wrong. Too many plays and no one will attend." This is Athens. Every decision has an audience, every policy a performance. No closed rooms. No microphones, only voices, sweat, and the shadow of the Acropolis spilling across the stone. After the session, you walk with your father back home. On the way, he asks, "What do you think?" You nod, then say, loud, but also true. He smiles. That is democracy. Not tidy, not perfect, but at least you can hear it contradict itself. You cannot join in, but you grasp a little of the gravity and the comic side of this democracy, a system both full of ideals and full of farce, a place where you might be expelled simply for being too famous. Cypherism is real. Or you may be chosen as a finance official just because your name is pulled at random from the lot box. In the afternoon, you stop by a philosophy teacher's house, not to study, only to listen at the edge. A few teenagers argue about what beauty is. One says it is form, another says it is proportion. The teacher laughs and says, "Beauty is when we look more slowly." You do not fully understand, but you keep the words. After that, you wandered to your friend's house. Her name is T. The two of you draw on the ground with a stick and trade sidewalk news. Who just married, who was caught dozing at the shrine, who was chased by a dog for stepping on an offering bowl. Stories that seem trivial, but they are how Athenians keep the community stitched together. You say, "I heard the Phoenix today talked about cutting costs for temple building." T grimaces. Touch the arts and they forget the gods need a stage. Evening settles. You sit on the doorstep holding a crumb of bread, listening to the neighbors argue whether, if Pericles were alive, he would support a tax on oil. Another voice answers, he would support anything that could fund more plays and temples. You think Athens is a strange place. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone is ready to change it tomorrow. Before bed, your father asks whether you think you will speak on the Phoenix one day. You pause and answer, "Yes, but I will talk about hard bread first." He laughs. Then you already understand the nature of politics. You lie down, moonlight slipping through the crack of the door like a ribbon of milk. The city is still noisy, but inside you, this is the quietest day yet, because you have seen Athens argue, struggle, and smile at the same time. You think that after a day in the market and a day listening to politics, tomorrow you will rest. Wrong. Your mother wakes you early, not to sell, but to go to worship. The temple of Athena stands stern on the peak of the Acropolis, which means to meet the goddess, you must first climb a steep stone hill. Your legs still ache from yesterday, but refusing would bring your mother's famous line, "If you do not honor the gods will forget you." and you are not brave enough to test how true that is. You climb step by step among a procession of people carrying garlands, incense, wheat, and wine. Someone plays a flute. Someone murmurs a prayer. An old blind woman leads a white goat while mumbling the wrong divine names. You ask why you must bring offerings. Mother says, because you have never seen a god angry. At the top, you see the Parthenon, splendid and vast, its white columns standing in ranks like an unmoving army. Morning light flashes on the marble until the whole temple seems to glow. You are transfixed. For the first time, you understand why Athenians can endure taxes, dust, and noisy meetings to raise such a thing. People line up to offer. Your mother lifts a small flask of oil, bows forehead to the stones, and whispers her prayer. You imitate her, hands trembling, unsure whether to speak loudly or softly. Quietly, you promise, Athena, if I do not slip down the hill today, I will bring one more flower next week. A simple vow, but honest. Behind the temple, a line waits to hear prophecy from a pseudo-priestess. You are not allowed near. Only adult men or the wealthy may consult. Still, you overhear someone say she declared the grape harvest would be sour this year because Poseidon is displeased. Someone asks what Poseidon has to do with grapes. Another replies, when gods are angry, they have to do with everything. You circle the Acropolis. A group of children are playing gods and monsters. One is Zeus, one is Hades, one is Hermes running in circles with makeshift winged sandals. You smile. The grown honor the gods solemnly, and the children become them for play. Perhaps both ways keep the gods in the heart. You stop.
A giant statue of Athena, so tall that its shadow covers you and a portion of the temple. Scholars still argue whether it was sheathed in gold entirely or only in parts to trick the light. But when you stand at its feet, truth or not no longer matters. You feel small, and you feel seen. Not long after, you follow your mother down the hill, your legs trembling like softened wax. You pass a man hulling wine uphill, his face flushed red from the sun. He groans, "Why are all the gods on hills? Why is no one building a shrine near the docks?" You almost laugh, but your mother gives you a stern look. Do not laugh when someone's legs are tired from faith. Back home, you collapse, back aching, head hot. Your mother brings you a bowl of barley porridge and says, "Drink it up. Tomorrow we must go to the fields." You look at her, ready to protest, and only sigh. In Athens, rest is not on the list of gifts the gods hand out. In the afternoon you hear chanting from a small neighborhood shrine, not grand like the Acropolis, but just as devout. A woman stands before the household altar, a laurel twig in her hand, whispering something you cannot catch. You think faith in Athens does not need to be loud. It can live in a trembling hand, a little flask of oil, or simply in the patience to climb a hill. That night your father tells the old story of Athena and Poseidon contending for Athens. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident and made a spring of salt water. Athena planted an olive tree. The people chose the olive, and so we have this city. You ask what if they had chosen the salty spring? Your father winks. Then you would live in a city named Poseidonia and eat fish instead of oil. You smile and fall asleep. The scent of olive oil still lingers in your hair. Today you have met the gods, or at least you have climbed close to their door. And whether they listen to your prayer or not, you know this: to live in Athens is to live under looks from the sky, both challenging and protective. The next morning, you were woken not by your mother or the rooster, but by a strange noise, shouts, trampling, a whistle. You crawl outside, rub your eyes, and see the whole street streaming toward the road. A runner dashes past and cries, "There is a play at the Dionysia." You blink. Is it festival season already? Living by the Athenian calendar means days are counted not by chores, but by gods, and the Dionysia is something special, a celebration for the god of wine, delight, and theater. You and your family join the flow toward the Theater of Dionysus, tucked under the foot of the Acropolis, an open-air place of stone benches arcing in a wide half-moon around a round dancing floor where everything will happen. The sun has not climbed fully, yet the seats are already full. People have brought cloths to sit on, hard bread, even flasks of wine. Someone shouts, "Make way! I have been here since before the rooster!" You squeeze into a space between two old women arguing whether today's production is staged by Sophocles or by a newcomer named Rip Ice. I still prefer the old plays. The new ones are all jabs and philosophy. My head hurts. The other sniffs. Then perhaps you have not understood. The first play begins. It is a tragedy. You can tell by the large masks and the slow, grave gestures. There are no actresses. Men play every role, even the women. There is a scene where a son kills his father because of a mistake. The audience sighs, nods, some weep. Someone near you murmurs that scholars still debate whether Athenians were truly moved or only performing that they had noble souls. You are not sure, but your nose stings. After the tragedies comes a comedy, and it is entirely different. A man strides out in a rumpled costume with a padded round belly like a wine cask and shouts, "Who ate all the olives in my house?" The crowd roars. A person behind you says, "Comedy now knows no limits. They dare mock even the gods." And indeed, in the play, a figure of Zeus is beaten by his wife with a sandal. "By the gods," a spectator cries, "today I feel less alone." You are swept along by the lines. In one scene, the hero begs the god to turn him into a wine jar, so his wife will stop scolding him for drinking. The crowd leans over laughing, and you understand that in Athens, the stage is not only for telling stories, it is where the community sees itself, both in tears and smiles. Between plays, the chorus enters. They do not sing light tunes, but solemn stanzas, even tempered like the city's own lullaby. One ode praises the victory at Marathon. Another thanks Dionysus for giving humankind wine and drama. You feel small again, but connected, like a single note in a vast chorus. By late afternoon, you are limp with weariness. The sun has turned, and the shadow of the Acropolis drifts down the theater like a colossal curtain. You lean against your mother, who has fallen asleep, still murmuring a god's name. Before your eyes close, you hear an actor cry in the final play that freedom does not live in armor, but in laughter. You drift and think the Dionysia is not only for honoring the god of ecstasy, it is to remind you that Athens, tired, poor, quarrelsome, and unfair, survives by laughing at itself. That is how it keeps going.
At night, you sit on the doorstep, listening as the neighbors analyze the performances like seasoned experts. That scene where a son kills his father is clearly a metaphor for war between the city-states, someone declares. Another replies, "I think the director just hated his own father." You smile. Right or wrong, each person sees themselves in the story. And that is the real power of theater. You lie back on the straw mat, your head still murmuring lines. One sentence rings clearly in your head. The one who cannot laugh at themselves will end up crying because of others. Athens is strange indeed, a place where pain is sung and hope is wrapped inside applause. The next day you think you will rest, but no. Your father calls you before dawn, his voice low like the beat of a wooden drum. "Today to the fields."
You feel a little resentful but do not dare protest. In Athens, labor is not optional. It is how you live, how you are seen as a proper citizen, and how you avoid the harvest goddess withdrawing her favor. You shoulder a hoe and follow your father to the fields outside the city. The early light has not yet dried your bones, yet the back of your tunic is already wet with wind and dust. You step past the parched furrows where your father grows barley, beans, and a few small vines. No machines, no chemical fertilizer, no clever agriculture. Only hands, sweat, and weather that either helps or ruins everything. Your father hands you a dull sickle and points at the bean clumps, cut from the roots gently. You obey. Your hands grow numb from the constant stoop. Every 10 minutes you look up and see the sun inching higher, as if it too were supervising you. A line from a philosopher yesterday echoes, "Labor is the essence of man." You curse him softly. After a while, a neighbor stops by carrying a jug of wine and a dry loaf. He gives them to your father and nods. When the harvest is good, we share. When it fails, we sing. Your father winks at you. That is our field philosophy. You chew the hard bread like brick, but warmth returns to your chest. You ask your father, "What if there is a drought?" He answers, "Then we make more offerings. If it still does not rain, we go to the temple to ask the gods." Historians still debate whether Athenians truly believed offerings could control the weather, or whether they simply needed to feel they were doing something. Either way, when your sweat runs like a stream, you understand that belief is also a tool for survival. Near noon, the sun seems determined to cook your head. You and your father rest beneath an old fig tree and share a bowl of water mixed with a little honey, rare and precious as gold. You lean against the trunk, listening to the cicadas, your heart light as dry grass. A drowsy noon nap in the heat is a specialty of Athens no history book records. In the afternoon, you help carry bundles of barley home, tying them with rough flax rope. Each step makes your shoulders want to fall away. But when you pass a group of children at play, you hear them shout, "Who is the goddess? Whoever grows sweeter grapes will be the goddess." One child with a wreath on her head cries, "I am the meter, and I forbid you to water the wrong plants." They all laugh, and you shake your head laughing along. Here, even a goddess is assigned a role by the little ones. When you reach home, you set the bundles down, your legs soft as noodles. Your mother brings out a bowl of bean porridge, seasoned with salt, and sets it on the hearth without a word. You eat in silence, as if the food were a thank you for the work just done. Your father mutters, "This year looks promising." Your mother answers gently, "If the gods allow." That evening you sit a while, your hands still trembling from weariness. A neighbor arrives and tells of a dispute between two farmers in the south over a boundary stone that had been trampled out of place. They planned to take the case to the citizens' council, but in the end, they simply shared a jar of wine. You ask, "Is that fair?" He shrugs. "In Athens, wine settles more than law." You think about that as you climb into bed. Athens is a strange place, harsh and soft-hearted. Here, labor is not honored with statues, but with a warm bowl of porridge and a small sentence. Sometimes that is enough. Before sleep, you whisper to yourself, "Will we go to the fields again tomorrow?"
Then you smile. The question is wrong. Not whether you will go to the fields, but whether the rain will fall. For if not, you will once again see your father holding a laurel sprig, quietly climbing to the temple of Demeter, not to ask the goddess to show mercy, but to remind her that those at her feet are still waiting. You wake to the tinkling of bells and the shouts from outside. The door is not yet open, but the smell has already pushed in. Goat droppings, sweat, sour fish, and honey cakes burnt at the edges. All swirl into a mixed fragrance only Athens can brew on a market day. The market is the city's beating heart. It is not only a place to buy and sell, but where rumors bloom, philosophers argue, and mothers scold their children. Your father tells you to buy olives and flax rope, and don't be cheated. Your mother hands you a woven basket and warns you to buy exactly the small, dark olives. The other kind will sting your mouth. You cross the agora, the central square. Voices of hawkers strike your ears. Raisins, cheap as sand. Goat meat still fresh, it barely had time to bleat. Who needs a clay jar painted with drunk Dionysus? You roll your eyes. There are handicrafts, farm goods, spices, and countless objects whose purpose you cannot guess, all advertised as treasure. A man shouts, "This wooden spoon was once used by a wise man." An old woman cackles, "That is a nose-picker, old sir." You stop at a stall with olives exactly as your mother described. The seller squints at you. "Whose child are you? Buy this kind, rich with the flavor of goddess Hera." You answer, "Is the Hera flavor cheaper?" She bursts out laughing and drops the price by 1 coin. You drop by a stall of wax tablets, small wooden boards coated with wax for writing. Someone is arguing with the owner. "This tablet is tilted. When I write a love poem on it, it looks like a cry for help." The shopkeeper, without blinking, replies, "Love is truly a cry for help, sir." You pick up a board, heavy and smelling of fresh wood. You imagine writing, "Today is sunny. Mother will be pleased I bought the right olives." In the crowd, you notice a circle around a speaker. Yes, a philosopher. He wears a coarse cloak, is barefoot, and leans on a staff. His voice rings like a bell. "Who is free? The one who has much money, or the one not bound by money?" A man in the crowd replies, "The one who does not go to market." Laughter ripples. A group of children play at being teacher and pupils. One yells, "I am Plato. If the true chair does not exist, what are we sitting on?" Another shouts back, "On our behinds." You cannot help but laugh. That is Athens, where even children know the names of philosophers, if only to tease. You visit a rope seller's stall, asking for strong flax to tie vineyard posts. The vendor is an older woman with hands calloused like bark. She tells you, "This one can pull oxen. Tying people, it is a bit too soft." You laugh and ask if she has ever tied people. She shrugs. In wartime. Everyone has done things not written in the histories. The sentence follows you. Athens' history shines with glory, but there is always the part no one tells. When you reach home, you hand the basket to your mother. She examines each olive and nods. "Good, no one fooled you." Your father tests the flax rope and nods. "Sturdy, not rotten." The true reward is supper. Bread dipped in the new oil, a piece of goat cheese, and a cup of watered wine. You tell them about the rope seller, the philosopher shouting to the crowd, and the child who pretended to be Plato. Your father sips his wine and says, "Long ago I stood in the agora thinking I was a wise man. Then my grandmother slapped me because I forgot to buy salt." The whole house laughs. You feel yourself part of something not grand, not mythic, but plain and real. Your hands still smell of flax, and your ears still hear a hawker's boast. "This broken jar once held the tears of Achilles." Before sleep, you murmur, "Tomorrow is the council day." Your father answers, "Yes, prepare your speech, or you will have to listen to the neighbor talk about his goat for a full hour."
You think perhaps Athens does not need a stage. The agora itself is a never-ending play. Next morning you wake not to roosters, but to wooden drums calling the city council. Your father taps your shoulder. Dress quickly and come.
The Pnyx is not a grand building with a domed roof. It is a low slope looking toward the Acropolis, with a stone rostrum cut into a speaking platform and rough stone tiers for citizens. Here, among wind and birdsong, the people of Athens, if qualified, discuss, argue, and vote. You choose a place near your father. He whispers that today someone will propose rebuilding the city's western wall. There are rumors of pirates. You ask if you must fight. He winks. Not yet, but we may quarrel. A man climbs the platform. His cloak is dark. His hair is grizzled. His voice resounds. Our city must be as steadfast as the reason of Socrates, unmoved by rumor. Another voice shouts from below, the reason of Socrates ended on a gallows. The assembly roars. The speaker raises a hand. And so, he says, I continue. You are surprised. No one holds the right to speak alone. Anyone may object, interrupt, or challenge. No one is called commoner. There are only citizens, and citizens may differ. Historians still argue whether Athenian democracy was true democracy or merely a playground of rich men. But you sit here, seeing a raisin seller debate a shipowner, seeing both heard, and you think, at least they are not ignored. Mid-session, a man proposes higher taxes on those who import wine from the island of Samos. He says Samian wine makes men weak, women too talkative, and children unruly. Someone below shouts, "You're describing my family." Laughter swells, but the discussion turns. Some call it trade prejudice. Some agree. At last, hands rise to vote, and yours rises with your father's. Afterward, a man stands and offers something unusual: to hold the theater festival a week earlier to avoid the rains. Immediate whispers. No play is finished. We need actors not yet drunk. Who will choose the scripts? An elder rises and declares, I have a comedy about Dionysus lost in the Athens market. And so the meeting flows softly toward art. You watch and think that here they do not speak only of politics. They speak of food, of clean water, of drama and wine, of missing cattle, and of planting figs on the eastern slope. Everything that touches life is politics. When the sun climbs high, the meeting ends. A man recites thanks to the gods, and the crowd dissolves into narrow lanes, becoming farmers, potters, sailors, grape sellers, fathers and sons again. You and your father pause at a small shop and call for 2 cups of watered wine. I once wanted to be a speaker, he says, but your grandmother said I was too much. No one would listen. You smile. He sips, thoughtful. To be heard is a privilege. At least we are not silent. You turn that sentence over on the walk home. In Athens, your voice is part of your body.
not only to sing or ask directions, but to argue, to persuade, to change. That night you tell your mother about the session. She nods and murmurs, "So many people, and not one proposed drains for our alley." You watch the oil lamp flicker, hear the charcoal speak softly, and understand that life in Athens is a chain of meetings without end, whether on the hill or in the kitchen. You wake on a special day of the year, the Panathenaic festival, one of the city's greatest, when all Athens honors its guardian, Athena. They say that on this day you are not only a small person in a crowd, but a thread in the grand tapestry of the city's devotion. Your house is busy from first light. Your mother packs food. Your father prepares a little laurel sprig to pin on his cloak. You help attach tassels to a strip of cloth that will be carried to the Parthenon. The finest reward is not to witness the rite, but to know you have contributed a small thread to the great robe for the goddess. You join the current of people moving from the Agora toward the Acropolis. The air is so lively that you barely feel your legs, though you have walked nearly an hour. Potters set up tents to sell jars painted with Athena striking down monsters. Masked performers whirl and toss jokes so salty that an old woman shouts, "Don't let the children hear. Ah, well, let them learn early." Young athletes, bare-bodied and lithe as if carved from stone, prepare for the races. They rub themselves with olive oil, not only to gleam, but to protect their skin and soften blows. The horns sound. The procession begins. A long line moves up the hill with banners, ritual arms, instruments, and at last the vast Pepelos. You lift your gaze to its bright colors, alive with Athena felling the giant Enceladus. Historians still debate whether this painting is purely religious or a political allegory, but right now you find it so beautiful you could weep. The procession moves into the Parthenon, amid shouts and brass, and slowly the great Peplos is presented to the ancient wooden image of Athena within the inner chamber, where only the priests may step. You do not see that moment, yet you know it happens, and sometimes knowing is enough. After the procession comes a great public feast. Dozens of cattle are sacrificed, and afterward the meat is shared with the people. A soldier presses a fragrant piece of roast into your hand and says, "Eat. Today everyone is kin." You do not ask what animal it is, you simply eat, hesitating at first, and feel a quiet joy rising from your stomach to your cheeks. When the sun inclines toward the west, the contests begin. Reciting Homer, playing the lyre, dancing, and of course athletics. You sit on a stone step watching two wrestlers grapple in dust and sweat and cheers. One is thrown, sits up, dusts himself off and shouts, "I was only hugging the earth, mother!" The crowd laughs until it aches. Near dusk you witness a strange race, the torch relay. Runners carry blazing torches, passing the flame without letting it die. The last to arrive with fire still alive wins, and you think that image, someone running through night with light cupped in both hands, is the essence of Athens. On the way home, a lyre rings from a balcony.
Someone sings praise to Athena, the wise goddess who granted the city the olive tree, symbol of peace, learning, and good food. You murmur along, even though you do not remember all the words, you remember the feeling. A day of living together without battle or quarrel beneath a sky so absurdly blue. Back home, your mother polishes the water jar. She asks if you saw the goddess. You answer, "No, but I heard the city call her name." She smiles and says, "You are starting to sound like a poet." You think that if you had to bear heat, dust, sweat, the smell of roasting, and the tangle of horns every day, it would still be worth it if each day brought the sense that you were part of something vast, old, and still alive. Athens is not only a city, it is a collective dream repeated daily in deeds, voices, and festivals. And today, you lived inside that dream. After the raucous festival days, you imagine life will return to its usual pace. Rise early, eat little, work much. But no, the harvest has come, which means a journey of many days away from the city to toil in the family fields out in Attica. You dislike this, but your father says this is when Athens grows quiet so the wheat can speak. You pack neatly, set aside your stage dreams and philosophical questions, and go with him along the dusty red outskirts over rutted earth roads where wooden wheels wobble as if drunk. Along the way you see others moving toward the fields. An old woman carries a basket of onions and sings a folk hymn to Demeter, goddess of the harvest. A child is stung by a bee, shrieks, then is lightly slapped by his mother who says, "The bee works, you should learn from it." When you arrive, the family's simple stone house stands among olive trees. You close your eyes a moment and breathe earth, ripeness, and wind whispering through leaves. It is lovely, and you still know what awaits. Hand labor from dawn to dusk, mercy depending on weather. The first task is picking olives. You climb the tree with a long hooked pole and tap so the fruit falls onto cloth spread beneath. It seems a game until your shoulders turn to twine, your foot slips, and one olive drops on your forehead. You yelp, "Athena, forgive me!" and laughter rises from below. An older cousin says, "Do it right and the fruit falls. Do it wrong, and you do." That line haunts you all day. You count more than 500 olives and 3 near falls. At noon, the whole family gathers in the shade to eat bread dipped in oil with pickled vegetables. People talk about last year's harvest, a missing ox, and a neighbor who talks in his sleep. You ask what he says. Someone answers, "Curses only, worse asleep than awake." In the afternoon, you help with pressing. The press is a great wooden frame with a stone spindle that several must turn. Oil seeps heavy and golden, sticky on the skin, oddly fragrant. Watching that thick stream of golden oil flow, and for the first time, you think, perhaps this is the miracle Athena brings, not in war, but in each quiet drop of labor. Night comes without lamps, without a stage, without plays, only a small fire, a few roasted tubers, and the elders' stories about the year lightning burned an entire forest, about the time a white wolf came right up to the door. An ill omen, one elder says. Another grimaces, or perhaps he was so hungry he mistook a dog for a wolf. You were assigned to sleep in the hay store. The smell of dry straw, the chirr of crickets, and strange silence make you feel both peaceful and alone. No one here debates justice. No one argues philosophy. There are no footsteps on white stone. Only you, the insects, and a sky of stars with no torches to drown them. Historians still argue whether Athenians truly loved the land or merely treated it as duty. But after a day of beating olives, turning the press, and listening to stories around the fire, you know the parched soil has become a piece of your own flesh. You fall asleep, oil still on your hands, and dream of a giant olive tree rising in the center of the agora, where no one argues and everyone simply naps. You wake the next morning with sunlight pouring into the storehouse. A cat lies on your belly and glances at you as if to say, "Get up, city person. There are 10 more trees to pick." You sigh softly, sit up, and begin a new day, not as a citizen, but as a farmer in truth. You have returned to Athens after the harvest, imagining you will have a few days' rest. But no, the city never truly sleeps, and this time it is because of a wedding. Not yours, thank the gods, but that of your mother's 4th cousin. In the world of ancient Greece, any wedding within the kin is an event you must attend, or at least help prepare. So many preparations. A wedding in Athens is not come, eat, take a picture, and go home. It lasts 3 days, and each day carries a task, a rite, and an excellent chance to be publicly embarrassed. Day 1, the betrothal and the ritual bath. You were assigned to bring water from the public fountain to the bride's house. Not 1 jar, but 5, and the earthenware has few handles, heavy and slick as if it bore you a grudge from a previous life. You puff along the streets and see others doing the same. A little girl passes and says, "It spills less if you walk slowly." You choke back a laugh and nearly slip while trying to show off. Philosophy may help you understand the world, but it does not help you carry water better than a 10-year-old. That evening, the family gathers to eat. No chairs, of course. Everyone sits on the floor and talks eagerly about the dowry, the gift no marriage can do without. A dowry is not only money, it is the guarantee of the bride's place in her new household. Your mother murmurs, "If I remarried, I would want an entire pottery workshop." Your father lifts an eyebrow. "I ask only that you not bring your sister." Day 2. The wedding itself. The bride is dusted with white powder, cheeks red as if wind-scorched, hair braided with patient care. You have never seen anyone so beautiful and so anxious at once. She says little. Athenian women are not to speak much during the ceremony. It is a day for men to decide and women to enact, something that feels wrong to you, though you cannot yet say why. In the evening, the procession begins. The bride is conveyed from her father's house to her husband's by wagon, torches bright along the road. You carry a torch behind her. Remember that joke about needing sunscreen? Now you truly do. The torch you hold drips hot wax onto your hand, making you wince for the whole way. But you do not complain. Everyone here is enduring in their own fashion. Day 3. The feast at the groom's house. Not as you imagined. Men and women dine apart. The bride sits in a private room with the women, while the men feast in the courtyard. You move between them with dishes and blessings. A friend whispers, "She seems sad." You nod. No one asked whether she wished to marry. Historians still debate how much voice Athenian women had. Some say they were carefully prepared, others that they were merely pieces on a board. You think both may be true, depending on family and fate. But clearly, the wedding day is not the bride's. It is a day of arrangement, of knitting lineages, of family honor. When the guests thin, the bride is led to the bedchamber, followed by cheers and by the custom of scattering bay leaves and chestnuts on the sheets to pray for children. You stand outside with a wine jar, silent. Not because you were sad, but because you recognize a new life has begun and none of you knows what kind. You walk home through lanes deep with shadow and sprinkled with dying torch ash. An old man shuffles by and speaks as if to the night. Marriage is like a boat. With a fair wind, set sail. Against the wind, drop anchor. You ask, and if there is no wind? He shrugs. Then row until you are tired and stop. At home, you lie down and cannot sleep. You think of the bride, of the groom whose name you scarcely know, and you wonder what their life will be. Then you think of yourself and know you are not so different. Every Athenian is a link bound by tradition, by family, and by a little fog of fate. You pull the thin cloak over your shoulders and hear birds far away. Marriage, like everything else in Athens, is not a private adventure. It is a collective act, and you, though only a bystander, have kept pace with it for 3 days and will not soon forget.
You wake with an aching back and a mind adrift after the wedding, and the truth is that nothing pleasant waits today. Instead of rest, you are pulled from bed at first light because your father has received a call for the militia, not for the battlefield yet, but for training, as every Athenian citizen is expected to do. You think you have survived olives, a wedding, rowing, and even philosophy. But no, ancient Greece has another harsh joke for you. Stand straight, lift a heavy shield, and hold your place. You put on a plain set of armor that your mother patched after your father almost lost his shield at a prior drill. The coat is heavy. Sweat pours the moment you tighten the straps. You feel wrapped inside a mobile oven, yet you must keep a serious face as the instructor, standing on a dais, shouts the gods' names and orders. Phalanx formation, shoulder to shoulder. If the man beside you falls, you fall. You ease into the line, grip the round shield with both hands, and begin to understand why war is not something anyone should dream of. The shield is too big, too heavy, and it covers the right side of the man to your left, not yours. You protect his exposed half, while your own safety depends on hope. An older uncle on your left leans in and murmurs, "The trick is, don't fall before the man on your right does." You cannot decide whether to laugh or cry. Historians still argue how effective phalanx training truly was beyond the battlefield. You can confirm one thing now: it is a test of patience, of shoulders, and of forgiving the foot that accidentally crushes your toes. After 2 hours marching on ground hot as a cook's hearth, you are allowed to rest. But rest only means loosening the shield straps and wiping sweat with your sleeve. You sit with other new recruits. Everyone is confused, spent, and surprised to still be alive. They don't give us a support stick because they want to see who drops first, one says. Another adds, "I think Socrates talked about this, but he wasn't the one holding the shield." You stand for the next lesson, the javelin. Simple, yes? You cast it, it spins in the air, and comes back to slap your leg. Not everyone is Achilles, you think, clutching the burning calf. The trainer shouts, "If this were a real field, you would have killed yourself and the comrade next to you." As the sun slants, you learn to make signal fires, not for cooking, but for messages. There are 3 colors of smoke: white for peace, black for alarm, and gray for when the wood is wet. You try to light the fuel, scorch your hand, and nearly ignite a dry patch of grass behind you. No one is hurt, but one goat bolts in panic. The drill leader says, "I cannot tell whether you were a soldier or a walking disaster." You don't know what you have learned that day. Perhaps how to stand still in the heat without fainting, or how to pretend to be eager while your heart longs to run home. But what you remember most are the eyes of the older men, those who have seen true war. They neither laugh nor complain. They only watch you,
as if waiting to see whether you can endure as they did. You reach home in the dark, limbs trembling, shoulders sore, and heart still drumming in the phalanx's cadence. Your mother looks at you, pours a cup of cold barley water, and says, "Welcome home, defender of Athens." You think of arguing, but you only drink and sigh. In Athens, you do not need to face a battle to know what war is. A single day of training is enough. You crawl into the straw bed, ignoring the hovering mosquitoes, and wonder what you would do if war truly came tomorrow. You have no answer, because only now are you beginning to understand that in ancient Greece, survival is not avoiding war, but learning to endure, even when no battle happens. You wake to hurried knocking, not soldiers, not a descending god, just a neighbor rushing over to borrow a basin. But today is not an ordinary day. It is the festival of Dionysia, the greatest of the year in Athens, and you are swept into the stream of people preparing for what ancient Greece treats as sacred art and a chance to laugh at the powerful, theater. Dionysia is not a small concert. It is a national contest where playwrights compete with grand tragedies and bold comedies. And you, who belong to no troupe at all, are assigned to pull back backdrops, hold props, and shout "ooh" at the right moments.
A glorious role, but essential. In the world of Athens, even those who don't speak on stage help carry the soul of the city. You arrive at the theater of Dionysus at dawn. Stone benches stretch upward, already dotted with people saving seats with cloaks or baskets. You slip behind the stage area, where actors are painting their faces and lifting masks nearly as tall as their torsos. Costumes made of linen and wool hang from wooden racks. Heroes, kings, queens, gods, all waiting for ordinary men to step into them. Someone hands you a rope. When the chorus finishes the first song, pull this to lower the painted backdrop. If you do it too early, the illusion dies. If too late, the poet dies inside. You stand quietly, holding the rope like you're carrying fate itself. The play begins. It is a tragedy. You can tell by the way the actors step slowly, as though each movement weighs as much as grief. A mother searches for her lost child under the city walls. The chorus sings of fate, of time, of how even the gods cannot escape their own stories. People weep openly, not quietly, openly. You wonder how a wooden mask can hold such pain. At the cue, you pull the rope. The backdrop drops. A gasp rises from the crowd. You feel your heart steady. You did not ruin the play. But after tragedy comes comedy. And here Athens becomes something else. A place where laughter is sharp as a spear, where the elite are mimicked, the gods teased, and the politicians ripped apart with words sharper than any sword. The actor playing Dionysus waddles on stage with fake belly and grapes in his hair. The crowd roars. Someone behind you whispers, "In comedy, we can say what we dare not say in council." That is Athens. Swords in one hand, jokes in the other. One scene mocks a powerful orator. He puffs out his chest and shouts, "My laws are wise," then trips over his own sandal. The audience erupts. Even the orator himself laughs, or pretends to. Another scene shows a man knocking on the door of the underworld to return his debt. Hades answers, "We don't accept returns." Laughter shakes the theater. You are dizzy from pulling ropes, lifting props, and shouting cues. But joy flows like warm wine in your bones. You understand now.
Tragedy teaches patience in suffering. Comedy teaches how to breathe through it. At the end of the festival, a prize is awarded. Not gold, not coin, but a wreath of ivy leaves. The winning playwright bows, tears in his eyes. You think how strange that words and masks could move a whole city. Evening falls. You walk home through streets still buzzing with laughter and recited lines. Your mother asks if you saw the gods today. You shake your head. No, but I saw people become larger than themselves. She smiles. Sometimes that is all the gods want. You think about what the city truly is. Not walls, not laws, but stories shared under the sky. And in Athens, stories are as necessary as bread. The next morning, your legs ache, but you are at peace. No festival today, no marriage, no war drill, just the usual work, fetching water, mending nets, sweeping dust out the door. Yet you feel different inside, as if a quieter, deeper music is playing in your chest. You go to the fountain with an empty jar. The line is long. People are quiet, half asleep. A woman behind you sighs, "Festival's over, back to burning bread and scolding goats." You smile. She whispers, "But it was beautiful, wasn't it?" You nod. Water flows into your jar, cold and clear. You think, this is also a gift of the city. You walk home past the agora. Merchants shout again. Philosophers argue again. Children chase chickens again. Life returns. Yet everything feels gentler. You place the jar in the corner of your home, and sunlight glints off its surface like a silent promise. The day begins.
The afternoon passes in a hush that feels almost like mercy. You sweep a thin trail of dust from the doorway, and it curls into the courtyard like a shy animal before the breeze takes it away. The house smells of warm clay and old oil, the gentle perfume of a life held together with small, patient things. Outside, the lane murmurs. From a rooftop, a lazy song drifts, someone rehearsing a line from yesterday's comedy, the rhythm softened until it is only breath. You sit by the jar and wet your lips with cool water. For a moment, you let your eyes close and imagine the sea beyond Piraeus, a plain sheet of silver folded by a distant hand. When you open your eyes, the light has changed. Afternoon has tilted toward evening, and a ribbon of shade has crept across the yard, long enough for you to sit inside it. No feast, not even comfort. Yet the quiet of eating slowly is its own small kindness. A neighbor passes and says nothing. You nod, and the nod feels like a word that both of you understand. In the distance, workers call to one another as they finish for the day. A hammer taps twice, then rests. A potter lifts his last vessel from the kiln and stands very still, guarding it with his breath as it cools. High on the hill, the great temple gathers the dusk on its shoulders. You think of the long procession, the embroidered cloth like sunrise caught in thread, the patient feet climbing until the city itself seemed to be walking upward. All of it feels far now, as if stored in a chest of softness. Someone laughs, quick and bright. Someone answers with a lower laugh that is almost a yawn. You rise and fetch a small bowl, pour a little oil, and rub it into your arms the way your mother taught you.
slow circles that invite the skin to remember it belongs to you. The day's grit loosens, then settles. The body, stubborn as stone, admits it might be ready to rest. As the sun lowers, the walls of the house exhale their heat. You carry a stool to the doorway and sit where the sky is widest. Sparrows stitch low arcs between eaves. A child recites a line of Homer and then forgets the next, giggling through the gap where memory should be. The words float down the lane and break gently against your ankles. You think, not for the first time, that speech is a kind of tide, and you are made of shore. Your father comes home with the last of the light. He sets down a small bundle, rope, a dull knife, a sprig of bay. He does not speak at first. He washes his hands from the jar and dries them on his tunic, then sits beside you, shoulders touching lightly. Quiet, he says. But the word means many things. Peace, and tired, and we are here. You answer, quiet, and let the evening climb over you like a blanket just pulled from the line. Your mother clinks bowls in the dim room and brings out what there is: a ladle of lentils, a shard of cheese, a few olives shining like small moons. You eat slowly, careful not to chase hunger away too quickly. It will only return with rude hands. The talk is soft. What needs saying is said. What can remain unspoken rests. Later, when the first stars prick, you climb to the flat roof. The city below is an instrument tuning itself to night. From one corner comes a flute, reedy and thin. From another, a low drum of footsteps. Lanterns drift by like tame fireflies. Somewhere a dog decides the moon has offended it and argues the point until the moon refuses to answer. The air is cooler. You breathe until your thoughts stop lifting their heads. You lie back on the rough roof and watch the dark grow gentle. The constellations settle into their old positions, the eternal rehearsal of forms over a field of sleep. You count them without number and give up counting. You press your shoulder blades to the stone and let the day's work drain into the sky, which knows how to hold it. When you climb down, the house is already breathing in the slow rhythm of shared sleep. You find your corner, curl around the softness that is yours, and close your eyes. The last sound you hear is water moving a little in the jar, as if the night has remembered to be kind and is practicing. The last thought you have is simple and round. The city will keep turning. You can rest.